Shocking truth exposed. Cops discover their boss is a black woman. Her incredible story revealed. Officer Jake Reynolds walked into the precinct, the air thick with tension. The news buzzed like a broken radio. Chief Angela Hayes was taking charge, shaking up the status quo the town had grown comfortable with. He could feel the whispers, the sideways glances. Some were intrigued by the change, while others, not so much. In Maplewood, a struggling town wrestling with deep-seated issues, the appointment felt like a hammer striking a fragile glass. The potential for a shatter was daunting. Jake's heart sank a little. He respected Chief Hayes. She had earned her stripes in tough neighborhoods, now tackling the challenging job of bridging the divide between cops and the marginalized communities they served. But could she really understand their world? His brothers in blue gathered after their shifts, beer bottles clinking, sharing dreams and gripes, building camaraderie over the struggles. But would they welcome her? Would they embrace change? The camaraderie felt fragile that evening. Jake could see the doubts hidden behind friendly smiles. "What does she know about our lives?" they whispered. Minutes turned to hours as the weight of their uncertainty grew heavier in his chest. He felt torn. Half of him wanted to stand by his brothers, while the other half urged him to support the change that tugged at his conscience. When a young black man was wrongfully accused, a situation that ignited Maplewood's racial tensions, Jake stood mesmerized by the outpouring of grief and anger during town hall meetings. Faces contorted by pain, voices shaking with emotion, they shared stories of inequity and mistrust. Each word dug deeper into Jake's core, challenging him, forcing him to wrestle with his own biases. "Change isn't easy," Chief Angela said one night, staring straight at the packed room. Her voice was strong, unwavering, and it cut through the air like a beacon. "But it's possible if we meet each other with open hearts." That moment struck like lightning. She was calling for unity, for healing, for a step towards something better. The crowd fell silent, captivated, yet skeptical. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue." Jake felt it. The hum of resistance. They wanted to believe, but as one officer bluntly declared, change might not be possible after all. That startled Jake. Why would he surrender when hope flickered just within reach? Questions spiraled in his mind as he watched his friends and colleagues each wrestling with loyalty, duty, and the fear of confronting truth. What did it mean to really protect and serve? As the waves of different opinions crashed around him, he stood at a crossroads, his heart racing. Was he ready to embrace change, to seek genuine justice, or retreat into the comfort of tradition? The weight of this decision pressed on him, twisting in his gut, leaving him staring into the unknown abyss of his future. The precinct felt different the next day. Officer Jake Reynolds walked through the doors, anxiety weaving through his thoughts like threads in a fraying tapestry. The weight of yesterday's turmoil lingered, like an unseen fog overshadowing his every move. Chief Angela Hayes was scheduled to hold a meeting, and the whispers of uncertainty had not faded. They were only growing louder, gathered in the break room. Jake stood at the edge with his coffee cup trembling slightly in his hand. His colleagues spoke in hushed tones, casting furtive glances toward the door. Each shared opinion stirred the atmosphere, a volatile mix of worry and skepticism. "What does she know about our lives?" echoed like a taunt, a dark cloud hanging over their heads. Jake took a deep breath, remembering Angela's words from the previous night. It wasn't just about the badge. It was about understanding the pulse of the community. But how could they trust someone who hadn't walked in their shoes? He thought of the young man wrongfully accused, the faces of grief and anger from the town hall meeting. If they could face that fear together, maybe they could bridge the gaps that felt unbridgeable if summoned by his thoughts. Chief Hayes stepped into the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was both fierce and warm, a contradictory force. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice steady. The murmurs quieted, yet Jake could feel the weight of fresh apprehension in each of his colleagues. "I want to talk about what is going on in our community," and how we can make a real difference. Silence enveloped the room, tangible and thick. Angela's eyes scanned the faces before her, the skepticism, the fear, and the hidden sadness. Listen, she continued, I know trust isn't built overnight. I'm not here to pretend I have all the answers. But I want to hear from you. I want to understand what we're facing out there. Jake felt the urgency in her words. He noticed a flicker of indecision in some men's eyes. They wanted to answer, but fear of the unknown kept them silent. Driven by something he could hardly name, he stepped forward. Chief, if you really want to know, there's a lot of doubt. People are scared of change. Angela nodded, her expression unreadable but open. I appreciate you saying that, Jake. I was scared too, the first time I led a department. Change is hard, but if we can face it together, we can create something truly special here. A ripple ran through the group, as if she had cast a baited line into a pond, hoping for connection. One officer spoke up. But it feels like a risk, you know? What if this just makes things worse? The tension shifted, launching discussions and voices, some laced with anger, while others begged for understanding. They argued, shared fears, and slowly let down their guards. As the conversation unfolded, a shared longing materialized. It was raw. It was human. They wanted to belong, to heal. The hours dragged on, and the meeting came to an end. Chief Hayes stood tall amid her fractured team. Change doesn't happen alone, she said, her voice rich with conviction. I need each of you to be a part of it. If we want to serve our community better, we have to step outside our comfort zones. Jake felt something shift in him, a flicker of hope igniting. He wasn't certain what this new path would look like, but he felt ready to walk it. Just as he gathered his thoughts to voice his willingness, the shrill tone of his phone jolted him. He glanced down to read a message that made his stomach drop. Another incident reported. Come quick. Panic raced through him. Was this change still possible when chaos felt so close? As he shot a glance at Chief Hayes, uncertainty etched in his heart. He knew one truth. They were about to face something monumental. But would they rise to meet it together? Jake's heart raced as he pushed through the doors of the precinct, the chill of the morning air following him inside. He couldn't shake the weight of that message from his mind. Another incident reported. It felt like a storm cloud hanging over him. Ready to unleash a deluge of chaos, he rushed to his desk, where his partner, Officer Mark Selby, was furiously typing on his computer. Mark looked up, worry etched across his face. You got that text too? He asked, the urgency clear in his tone. Yeah, Jake replied, shaking his head in disbelief. What could it be now? Word is there's been some trouble down at Millfield Park, Mark said, his eyebrows knitting together. A fight broke out between two rival factions. Could get ugly. Let us move, Jake replied, already gathering his gear. He felt the adrenaline surge through him, a familiar companion in times of crisis. But this was different. The meeting from earlier weighed on him. They had spoken about trust, about community, and now they were racing toward a situation that could shatter any progress they might have made. As they arrived at the park, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Crowds swarmed, voices rose in heated exchanges, and the sharp sounds of anger filled the air. Uniformed officers from neighboring precincts were already on the scene, struggling to maintain control. Jake looked around, scanning the crowd for the familiar faces he had grown up with. This was more than a mere incident. It was his community, the very people he had pledged to protect. And yet, hearing the shouts and watching the chaos unfold was like watching a nightmare play out in slow motion. Over there, Mark shouted, pointing to a small group that was inching closer to a massive confrontation. Jake's breath hitched. Everything he had hoped for felt at risk of imploding in an instant. Let us split and surround them, Jake said, trying to maintain his authority amidst the chaos. They both moved into position, attempting to cut off the conflict before it could escalate further. Just then, a figure emerged from the crowd. It was Lisa, a local activist known for her outspoken views on police-community relations. She raised her hands, trying to calm the roiling masses. Everyone, please. Let us not go down this road again. Her voice rang out, firm yet pleading. Come on, people, this isn't the way. She insisted. But the unrest was palpable, each person caught in their own emotions, driven by fears that far outweighed mere differences. Jake felt a stirring within him, a parallel to what Angela had said earlier. This was exactly where they could make a difference. He had to try to help Lisa. Taking a deep breath, he moved closer to the group, raising his own hands to demonstrate he meant no harm. "Wait," he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise, hoping to reach them. "We want to understand. We're here to listen." The crowd quieted for a moment, heads turning toward him, suspicion and confusion flickering in their eyes. Jake caught Mark's gaze over the crowd, reflecting the same uncertainty. Would they accept this, or was it too late? But then he saw Lisa's face light up with a glimmer of hope. "See, there are officers who want to talk. Let us just take a moment." Her voice was steady, echoing his desire for dialogue. It felt like a fragile thread, barely holding the tension together, but it was a thread nonetheless. Just then, a shout erupted from the other side, and the collective electricity surged again. Tension crackled anew. Jake's heart dropped. Would they pull apart the fragile piece Lisa had started to weave, or could they turn this moment into something constructive? He squeezed through the crowd, ready to do whatever it took. "We can make this work," he whispered to himself, hoping that today would be different. But before he could take a step forward, an unexpected loud noise thundered through the park, bringing with it an unsettling roar. Was it a gunshot? The crowd froze. Jake's stomach twisted with dread. What would happen next? Would they lie at the mercy of fear once again? The noise echoed through the park, a sharp crack that sliced through the tension like a knife. Jake's heart raced faster, each beat punctuating his fear. The air thickened, filled with an ominous weight heavier than before. People stood still, eyes wide, mouths agape, as they tried to piece together what had just happened. "Everybody stay calm," Jake shouted, his voice cutting through the stillness. He felt a desperate need to regain control, to keep the chaos at bay. But his own heart thundered in his chest, unsure if his words would carry any weight in this moment of panic that a few heads turned toward him, but most remained transfixed, as if waiting for something to explode. He glanced at Mark, who was scanning the crowd with a look of alarm. They had to act, and fast. If this situation spiraled out of control, the consequences could be dire. "Mark, let us start moving the crowd back," Jake said, trying to steel himself. "We need to create space." He gestured towards the outer edges of the park. Some uniformed officers quickly joined them, pushing back the throng, trying to maintain order as they maneuvered through the crowd. Jake's eyes caught Lisa again. She was still standing there, hands raised, face determined. "Please, everyone, think about why we're here," she urged, her voice a sharp contrast to the chaos surrounding her. "Lisa," Jake called out, his heart tethered to the hope she represented. "Can you help? We need to calm them down." She nodded, her eyes fierce with purpose, and moved closer to Jake and Mark. Together, they formed a small front amidst the sea of people, a fragile barrier against the fear that threatened to rear its head. "Listen up." Lisa's command resonated, her voice drowning out the murmurs around them. "We've been through this before. If we let fear control us, we'll lose everything we've worked for." Jake felt a flicker of hope. Could this be the turning point? Standing side by side with Lisa felt right, a reminder that they were in this together. Yet, even as optimism bubbled within him, a sense of impending dread loomed. Suddenly, another shout erupted from the throng. "What is going on? Why are we just standing here?" The question crackled with frustration and urgency, pulling Jake back to reality. Tension surged again, and the crowd began to shift restlessly. Jake glanced around, searching for answers. He had to quell this unrest before it turned violent. "Everyone," he shouted once more, desperation creeping into his voice. "We're here to protect you. We're not against you. Just trust us." But his plea was met with a dismissive roar. A young man with fury in his eyes stepped forward from the crowd, pushing back against the officers. "Trust? Have you seen what trust gets us?" The shout spread like wildfire, igniting others. "Yeah, you can't protect us when you don't even see us." The words struck deep, echoing with painful truth. Jake felt the sting. He had spent years trying to bridge these gaps, but hearing it vocalized forced him to confront the reality he didn't want to face. Just then, a movement caught his eye. Two figures in the distance were rushing towards them, drawing attention away from the chaos. As they neared, Jake recognized them, local leaders from the community, looking grave but determined. "Jake, we need to talk," one of them shouted. The crowd's murmurs shifted again, curiosity replacing the raw anger. Jake felt hope flicker anew, but it came tinged with anxiety. Would this be the moment they turned the tide, or would it add fuel to the fire? As the leaders reached Lisa, Jake felt the intensity of the moment build. The crowd was watching, waiting, holding their breath. Would this be a breakthrough or a breaking point? Jake clenched his fists, stepping closer, ready to fight for clarity amidst the chaos. Let us see what they have to say, he thought, determined but scared to death about what was about to unfold. The crowd held its breath, eyes locked on the two community leaders. The taller one, a woman with striking silver hair and a voice that commanded attention, stepped forward. Everyone, listen. We didn't come here to fight. We came to unite. Her words seemed to hang in the air, rippling through the restless sea of faces. Jake glanced at Lisa, her expression shifting from hope to caution. This was their chance, but the tension still crackled like the approaching storm they all felt. Unity? One voice shot back from the crowd, thick with skepticism. What does that even mean when we're on the brink of chaos? Unity means understanding, the woman replied firmly. It means listening to one another. We're not here to create more division. We need each other now more than ever. Jake could feel those around him slowly start to lean in, drawn toward her words. Maybe they had a shot at turning this around. He could sense the shift, a vulnerability creeping into the angry hearts that had been pounding moments ago. Lisa stepped closer to the woman, anchoring herself to her resolve. What are we going to do about what just happened? We can't ignore that fear. It's real, and it's palpable. Exactly. The silver-haired leader nodded sharply. And we need to confront it together. We can't become enemies because we're afraid. The crowd murmured agreement, but that spark of fear still danced in their eyes. Jake's heart raced. They needed a plan. Just then, the second leader, a shorter man with kind eyes, took a step forward. The truth is, fear is a thief. It steals our voice, our choices, and our sense of community. It can't define who we are next. Those words hung like a lifeline in the vastness of the park. Jake felt the crowd shift their posture, their energy. He caught Lisa's look. It was as if they were both holding onto the same thread of hope, but a shout pierced through, another voice tainted with rage. And what happens when the fear doesn't go away? When trust is a shattered glass? In an instant, the tension surged again. The crowd, unsure and restless, began to swarm. Jake's stomach dropped. Just when he thought they had a foothold, that old dread began to rear its head. Step back, he urged, holding his hands up, trying to maintain the fragile calm. Give them space. Listen, don't let anger rule your heart. We need to hear each other right now, but anger surged again, people pushing closer. It felt like a storm, brewing, ready to break. Jake looked at Lisa, seeing the worry etched deep in her brow. He knew they were at a precipice. Then, to his surprise, the silver-haired leader called out to Mark. We need your help. Bring the officers here, let us show we're on the same side. Mark hesitated, but then nodded. He knew it was time to act. As he moved, Jake felt a swell of hope and confusion. Would this bridge the gap, or would it tear them further apart? As Mark began to gather the police, Jake felt a flicker of dread once more. The time for honest conversation was now, but would the police and the crowd really listen? As Mark reached the officers, Jake caught a meaningful gaze from Lisa. There was a moment of clarity. This was it. They had to speak out, not just from the podiums, but from the heart. With the crowd swaying between trust and fear, Jake knew the next words spoken could shift everything. Could a simple plea ignite a new understanding? He gathered his breath and prepared to step forward. Let me say this, he started, uncertain but fueled with determination. What was about to happen would either forge a new path or plunge them deeper into chaos. The crowd quieted slightly as Jake took a step into the spotlight. The eyes around him felt like 1,000 lasers, searching for hope, for reassurance, for something that would bring them back from the edge. He could see the silver-haired leader nodding encouragingly. He cleared his throat, battling nerves that danced like fireflies in his chest. Listen, he said, his voice slowly gaining strength. I know this feels overwhelming. We've all faced too much fear and anger in the past few days. We have questions. We have doubts. But standing here, together, that's what counts. He could feel the weight of his own words pushing him forward. I don't have all the answers, but we need to start with listening and understanding. On both sides. The murmurs grew, Some faces softened, while others clenched tighter in tension. Then he saw Mark, standing with the officers who had just arrived. Their uniforms seemed to loom over the crowd like a gray blanket, thick with apprehension. Unity isn't about agreeing on everything, Jake continued, trying to keep eye contact with as many people as he could. It's about being willing to talk to one another, share our stories, and take a step toward healing. I know it's tough. Trust takes time. But we have a chance, right now, to begin changing how we interact. He glanced back at Lisa, hoping she could feel the strength he was trying to convey. She nodded slightly, and he took that as a sign to push on. I know some of you are scared, and that fear has turned into anger. We're all afraid of the unknown, of lost trust. But our fear won't help us grow together, it will only drive us further apart. From the back, he heard a voice shout, "What if they don't care?" The question hung heavy in the air, and the crowd fell silent again, listening intently. Jake felt his heart racing. He had to answer. I believe they do care. They're our community too. He pointed toward the officers, who stood stiff, eyes focused on the crowd. They are here to protect us. They don't want to see us hurting either. Mark took a risk to bring them here, to show you that this isn't about fighting. For a moment, there was a stillness that felt almost electric. The silver-haired woman stepped closer. Let us take this opportunity, she said, her voice steady as a drum. Let us make it a community discussion. Together. A wave of uncertainty swept through the crowd. People shifted their weight, glancing at one another, weighing the implications of such a choice. Jake could feel the tension beginning to crack and splinter, like a dam giving way to the water behind it. A young woman in the front shouted, clearing her throat. If it leads to understanding, I'm in. But I want honesty. We can't build unity on lies. Yes. Someone else chimed in, and the crowd began to nod, murmurs rippling through them like leaves in a breeze. Jake's heart raced. They could feel change stirring. The police stepped closer to the front, their presence no longer dominating, but supportive. They were not adversaries. They were part of this community, and they knew it. But just as a glimmer of openness filled the air, a sudden explosion of noise punctured the moment, a motorcycle revving, cutting through the charged stillness. Jake turned, his heart sinking. In the distance, a group had appeared, faces distorted with rage. Their shouts echoed through the park, drowning out the fragile momentum. Fear and anger surged once again, like a tide threatening to pull everyone under. Stay together, Jake shouted, but he was drowned out by the cacophony. He felt Lisa's hand squeeze his arm, grounding him in the chaos. Would they spiral back into the shadows of distrust, or could they push through once more? The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. Could they truly turn this moment into a step toward healing, or would they watch it all slip away? The roar of the motorcycle engines thundered like a warning bell, cutting through the fragile atmosphere. Jake's heart raced as he turned to face the approaching group. Anger radiated from them, palpable and thick, as they stormed into the park with protest signs in hand and shouts slicing through the air. Here we go, he muttered under his breath. Lisa's grip on his arm tightened, her wide eyes reflecting the chaos erupting around them. They're not here for a discussion, Jake. Her voice quivered with fear. Mark stepped forward, his uniform casting a long shadow as he raised his hands in a pacifying gesture. Everyone, please. Let us not do this. But the crowd of protesters was relentless, chanting slogans that echoed past the lines of police officers. Jake could see the tension creeping back into the faces of his own crowd, their cautious hope crumbling beneath the weight of aggression. The fragile agreement they had just glimpsed fell away like leaves in a storm. Could they really push past this? Stay calm, he shouted, trying to be heard above the din. We were just talking about unity. Let us not turn this into another fight. But he felt the futility of his words hanging in the air, swallowed by the noise. Unity? Came a voice from the mob, dripping with scorn. You think they give a damn about unity? They want to maintain their power, that's all. The words struck deeper than any physical blow. Fear ignited in Jake. What if he had been wrong? What if all this talk of conversation and healing was just a dream that would burst like a bubble under the pressure of reality? Mark turned to the officers, urgency flickering in his eyes. We need to de-escalate this before it gets out of hand. Some of the police stepped forward, keeping their body language non-threatening, but the crowd reacted. They shouted louder, their anger fortifying, fueled by fear and resentment. Jake's chest tightened as he glanced back at Lisa. What do we do? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Stick together. We need to show them that we care. He started, but his voice wavered as he saw the fear reflected back at him in her eyes. Then, in the clearest and loudest voice he could muster, Jake stepped forward, positioning himself between the approaching protesters and the crowd that had gathered around him. We want to listen. We want to know your stories. He called out. Let us talk. This isn't the way. A moment of shock rippled through the protesting group. The motorcycle engines began to quiet, the shouting lessening. For a split second, Jake felt a glimmer of possibility, a hope that maybe, just maybe, they could bridge this divide. But then out from the shadows of the protest group stepped a woman, her face partially hidden behind a black helmet. She removed it slowly, revealing a determined expression, striking and fierce. With piercing eyes, she scanned the crowd, taking in the scene unfolding before her. What do you hope to achieve here? She demanded, her voice steady and clear, commanding respect. Jake's heart raced again. Was she another voice of division? Or could she be a key to a different path? He took a breath, ready to respond. But just then, the ground shook as the motorcycle revved menacingly again, cutting through the moment. Confusion and anticipation mingled in the air. Who was she? What did she want? He could feel the crowd's eyes shifting between him and this mysterious new figure, waiting for an answer that could shape the night to come. Could she turn this standoff into something productive? Or would her presence send everything crashing down? The woman's presence felt electric, a charged moment that seemed to stretch out in time. Jake's heart thundered against his ribs as he looked into her eyes. They were fierce, filled with defiance and resilience. But beneath that, he sensed something deeper. There was pain there, a story waiting to be told. We're here for change, she said, her voice slicing through the unrest. Change that starts with listening and understanding. The crowd shifted, a collective intake of breath hanging in the air. Jake could almost see the idea blooming, a fragile flower pushing up through concrete. He nodded, desperately wanting to find common ground. Right. We want to understand. He echoed, trying to create a bridge between the two sides. Share your stories with us. What do you want us to know? You can't just ask for unity and keep on ignoring us. She shot back, but her tone softened slightly. We've been silenced for too long. Who are we to you? Just a bunch of angry faces? Jake felt the weight of her words. Was that really how they saw them? He glanced at Lisa, her face tense with fear, uncertainty, but also a flicker of hope sparking in the corners of her eyes. We see you and your pain, he replied, desperation creeping into his voice. We're trying to move past this anger. We're all scared. But together, we can do something better. The murmurs rippled through both crowds, a pulse of uncertainty. Would they listen? Would they trust him? The woman remained silent, evaluating Jake like he was an equation yet to be solved. And then, she surprised him. My name is Tasha, and I was born fighting. Her voice rose slightly, carrying through the rumble of motorcycles. I know what it feels like to be pushed aside, all while the world claims to be listening. But you know what? When you're ready for real change, you'll have to put in the hard work. You'll have to want it. Jake stepped closer, his hands out in a gesture of peace. Then let us do the work together. Talk to us. Show us the road to understanding. We want to change, Tasha. Help us see how. The tension in the air twisted again, the earlier anger bubbling just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. But this time, it felt different. The shouting reduced to whispers. Around him, Jake noticed his crowd dealing with their fear, stepping forward like they were ready to engage, ready to listen. What do you have to lose? Tasha challenged gently, her eyes sharp but vulnerable. Enough is enough. We cannot just talk anymore. We need to act. We're tired of the empty promises. The urgency in her words cut through the last of the bravado in Jake's own crowd. They were starting to understand that the instinct to fight wouldn't get them anywhere, only perpetuate the cycle. Both sides were gathering together now, the urge to unite and find solutions flooding the park. Just as the spirit of hope began to tug at despair, a loud revving erupted again, this time closer. The tension surged back up, every face in the crowd turning in unison towards the source of the noise. Shut it down. We're not the enemy, shouted a voice. The crowd morphed into a living, breathing being of collective anxiety, shifting from the discussion to a potential clash. Jake could feel his heart drop as he realized the danger was still there, looming like a shadow over their moment of potential breakthrough. "Stay with me," he shouted, desperate to hold their focus. "This is our moment. Don't let it get away." But doubt crept in. Would passion overpower reason? Would they hold on to newfound resolve or be swallowed by the chaos again? The future felt fragile, teetering on the edge. Would they rise together against the noise? Or would the fear pull them back into conflict? As Tasha scanned the crowd, determination in her eyes, Jake realized the truth was unfolding before him. He would do anything to keep this moment alive. But how? The revving of motorcycles intensified, drowning out the potential for understanding. The ground shook with each call for confrontation, and Jake saw the lines in the faces around him begin to harden again. Tasha's fierce demeanor wavered momentarily, her resolve cracking against the noise. Jake had to act fast. "Listen," he yelled, voice straining above the roar. "This isn't a time for fighting. This is a time to unite. Let's not let anger dictate our path." He could feel Lisa's hand gripping his arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear. He could feel the pulse of the crowd torn between fear and hope. Tasha remained quiet for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. There were nervous glances exchanged, fists clenching, breaths held. She turned to Jake, her eyes fierce once again. "We need a plan. We can't just react, we have to be proactive. A fight won't solve anything. What do you have in mind?" It was a question that gnawed at Jake. Beyond emotional appeals, what could he offer to steer them away from chaos? "We can create a forum," he blurted out, feeling the weight of his own uncertainty. "An open forum where people can share experiences, listen, and discuss real solutions without fear." A flicker of interest ignited in Tasha's eyes. "Are you suggesting that both sides sit down and talk? Just like that?" Jake nodded, his desperation driving him. "Yes. We can set up trust-building activities. Workshops maybe. If we put in the effort, we might find common ground. We're all humans here, facing the same fears." The crowd buzzed with uncertainty, yet there was a shift. Some people murmured in excitement, while others remained skeptical. Jake could see those who craved peace weighed against those who clung to previous grievances. Tasha stepped closer, her voice lowering, but the intensity of her message was palpable. "There are years of wounds here. Some people want to listen. You need to prove your intentions to show that you're willing to go the extra mile." "I will," Jake promised, the words tumbling out before he could double-check them. "I'll ask my people to help organize it. We'll show up. We'll listen. It won't be easy, but I believe it can work." And then a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. A man stepped forward, his face stormy. "You think a few workshops will change anything? You don't know what we've been through." Jake swallowed hard, realizing the challenges that lay ahead. "I don't. But I want to. I swear to you. I'm here to learn and to work for something better." The man stared at Jake for a heartbeat, and then his expression flickered. "Prove it. Bring real people's stories. Let us see if you're serious." Each word hung heavy in the air, a challenge and a chance. Tasha nodded in agreement. Pushing through the thick atmosphere of indecision, she turned to the crowd. "What do you say?" she shouted. "Will we take that next step together? Is it time to talk, or will we keep screaming into the void?" A hesitant murmur swept through the crowd, a ripple of contemplation. It was like the calm before a storm. Tension and hope intersected under the optimistic sky. The ailing trust between them felt fragile, yet clung together with a newfound possibility. Just as Jake believed they might break through, the deep thrum of motorcycle engines erupted once more, an ominous reminder of the outside pressures lurking. "You see?" The man pressed, voice thick with skepticism. "They won't let us have this." Jake's heart raced. "We can't let fear win. We've come this far together. We can do it. A united front can push through." The brightness in Tasha's eyes faltered slightly. "And if we can't? If it backfires?" He met her gaze, and for a moment, the world around them vanished. "Then we'll get back up again. Together." But they all knew the stakes were higher than they could comprehend, the fear gnawing at each hope-filled heartbeat. Would their voices truly rise above the chaos? Would the motorcycles drown them out once more? Or was this a pivotal moment, the turning tide they'd been waiting for? As the noise pressed in, Jake knew from the primal roar of uncertainty all around that this was just the beginning. Would his urgency and bravery be enough to overcome the mounting shadows on the horizon? Jake stood at the crossroads of chaos and hope, heart racing, words clanging loudly in his chest. The roar of engines mixed with shouts that clashed against the pulse of uncertainty hanging over the park. It felt like they were standing on the brink of a storm, ready to break or to rise. The air was thick with tension, each person around him caught in the web of what-ifs and maybes. "Listen," Jake shouted again, desperation sharpening his voice. "We can't let fear dictate our paths any longer. We are all in this together. Let us not go back to where we started." His words hung in the air, a fragile bridge over a gaping chasm. Around him, faces froze, a mixture of anger and hope swirling within them. Natasha's gaze met his, trust and uncertainty battling in her fierce eyes. "If we want to change things, we need to act, and not just with words," she declared, rallying those caught in turmoil. "We need to tear down the walls between us." A ripple of agreement coursed through the crowd, the first flicker of genuine unity sparking, but the motorcycles roared again, drowning her words. Jake felt the tension snarl tighter, and he knew they had to stabilize this moment before it fractured beyond repair. "Easy, everyone. Let us show them you're ready to talk," Jake said, hands outstretched in a peace offering. "We need each other. Show up for each other." The scream of motorcycle engines cut through his words, echoing the harsh reality of the long battle ahead, but he pressed on. "This is our town. Every one of us has a piece of it. We have to start from a place of understanding." The crowd around him shifted, weighing hope against skepticism. They needed something tangible, a plan. The younger woman who had spoken before stepped forward again. "What if we really do organize?" she posed, looking towards Jake and Tasha. "We can hold community forums, discussions, real healing workshops. We can share our stories." That was the spark. Around them, nervous glances turned to energized murmurs. Jake felt the surge of hope filling the air, blooming like wildflowers after a rain. "Yes," he exclaimed, his heart pounding. "We can show up, side by side. Let us be open and honest about what we've been through, every ounce of pain and loss. And we'll listen to each other with open hearts." Tasha nodded, a smile flickering in her eyes like sunlight breaking through clouds. "That's right. This is about healing the wounds, recognizing our shared humanity. If we're going to trust each other again, we need to start now." And just like that, the fervor in the crowd began to shift. A young man stepped up, voice booming. "All right, let us show them we can make change happen. Count me in." "Yes." Others began ticking off their support, voices joining together. Each person seemed to shake off layers of doubt, sparked by the warmth of shared purpose. The anger from the motorcycles began to fade into the background. Jake could sense the collective strength gathering, like steel forged from flames. This was no longer about fear. It was about hope, community, and fighting for every ounce of real change. And then everything came to a head as the roar of their deferrals neared again. But instead of dividing them, it unified this diverse crowd even more. "This isn't. It's just the beginning," someone shouted, followed by a chorus of nods and shouts echoing in agreement. "Together," Jake shouted, his voice blending in with the rising tide of determination. "Let us do this together." And, in an unexpected moment of clarity, the crowd turned from the chaos outside, the motorcycles fading into the background noise of an evening that would change forever. They were ready to transform the narrative of their town. As the last shouts of anger grew quieter, Jake caught a glimpse of Lisa's face, illuminated with something that had been absent before, pure resolve. "We're ready, Jake," she whispered, a certainty ringing clear in her voice. In that moment, he recognized it wasn't just the law they had to uphold, but the understanding, the trust, and the humanity that needed to rise amidst the turmoil. One by one, faces shone with the same determination, and the storm within the park began to settle. It was the first step, fragile but real, toward building a bridge of understanding, toward uniting the forces that had once threatened to tear everything apart. As the sun dipped low, casting golden rays over Maplewood's boundaries, they stepped forward together. And in that moment, dogs barked, the sounds of laughter and conversation gradually filled the air once more. From the distance, motorcycles quieted down, the tension lessening as hope surged like a wave through them. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. If you felt this moment shift, you need to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help people find this powerful story. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this change. True fans understand the importance of supporting the journey. Let us rise together.